There are a few pen brands whose legacy goes well beyond just their name, and one of those is Wahl-Eversharp. This is a pen brand that has over a century of history behind the name, and recently, in the last decade or so, was revived, and this pen, the Skyline, is one of their best known offerings. So I'm going to show it to you today. A big thank you to Wahl-Eversharp for providing this pen for me to show and review on my channel. So please like and subscribe, hit the notifications button, and consider becoming a member of this channel, where for a small monthly fee you'll get early access to my videos, priority comments, and a few other bits and pieces along the way. But right now, let's look at the Wahl-Eversharp Skyline fountain pen. So this is how the new or recent Wahl-Eversharp Skyline comes packaged. A little label on the outer sleeve there, and then the box that has a gold, reflective foil of Wahl-Eversharp and their new or modern logo. Then we get, since 1914, Wahl-Eversharp has been proud to offer high quality writing instruments to customers like you across the globe. Thank you for being part of that continued history. Yes. Continued, not consistent, I think is probably the way I would put it. And then here is the pen. So this is the Wahl-Eversharp Skyline. This is the blue with gold cap version of it. There's a few different versions, and they kind of range different prices and things like that depending on which version you get. This is the one that sort of struck me. So let's talk about the parts and features of this pen. Do a writing sample, we'll talk about some pros and cons. But first I want to talk a little bit about the history. So they say since 1914, and they started out by making things like counting machines, and then they expanded into writing instruments. By the 1930s, they were one of the big pen companies in the USA. And in 1941, they introduced the original Skyline, and the design was inspired by or referenced things like the steamline locomotive in the USA. And you can kind of see that in the lines of this pen. It's kind of Art Deco inspired, that, the way that clip wraps around and the blue sort of accent on the top, and then the lines and those kinds of things. They're all, kind of Art Deco inspired. And I'll come back to this, but even the design on the nib has some sort of Art Deco reference, which is wonderful. And a lot of the pens from, Wahl-Eversharp, or they were labelled as Eversharp at the time, the pens tended to sort of be of the industrial design style as well, where functionality was very important. Eventually, Eversharp was acquired by Parker, and they ceased to be. Then back in 2012, we got the revival of the brand with the intent of upholding the original aesthetic and design ethos of the company, just using modern materials, modern manufacturing, and that kind of thing. So this is anodized aluminium and what I'm assuming is maybe a lacquered brass sort of top and that kind of thing. It's not been a continuous story, but when the company was reborn, it was definitely done with the right intentions, not to just use the name to then sort of sell modern, pens. There's a couple of brands like that. It was designed to really bring back the glory of the Wahl-Eversharp brand. So pens like the Skyline and the Decaband, for instance, both reference very heavily the original design ethos and style of the company. So that's a very, very brief background. I'm not a vintage pen specialist. It's not my area, but I find this pen very interesting. So let's talk about the parts and features. Top of the pen, you see the clip there runs around the top entirely, and it's got the Eversharp branding on it there. As I said, the pens were originally, although the brand was the Wahl-Eversharp brand, the pens only referenced Eversharp because they were keeping some delineation between products in their sort of manufacturing. The blue anodized material on the top there, then this gold colored cap, which has these ribs all the way down, and it tapers very slightly towards the middle there. where we get a step down onto the anodized aluminium body, which continues, slowly tapers, and then that taper quickens and we get a little peaked end there. It is a twist cap pen and it comes off in less than 2 turns. We then get a very smooth but noticeable step down onto the rest of the barrel, then threads, and then the black plastic section which tapers and has a flare on the end, and then we get the Wahl-Eversharp nib here. It says Eversharp USA and then M for medium. It is a unique looking nib to this brand. It's got a really lovely sort of flared design, like the actual shape of the nib with the shoulders there. I think it's really quite beautiful and striking. So I imagine these are made, and the pens, the manufacturing of the pens is not actually done by Wahl-Eversharp, the brand who hold the title. It's done for them by another brand or another factory or that kind of thing. But I'm assuming by the design on this nib, it's unique in the shape of it. It looks unique to me, to my eye. Maybe I'm wrong. And if you know more about that than me, please leave it in the comments below. But to my eye, it looks like a relatively unique size and shape nib. Like it sort of starts at like what would be like a traditional number 4 nib and flares out to the width of say a number 6 nib. So it is very cool in that way. And it's beautiful and it's gold colored and I like it a lot. It is a standard international cartridge converter and a converter was provided. Now this is an anodized aluminium body, so it's quite lightweight, but it's got metal threads all through there, so it's nice and sturdy. I think the build quality of this pen is, for the most part, particularly the body itself, is remarkable. I think the build quality of the clip is good. It sort of wraps around and so it's got some flexibility. My only concern is the threads. They're not the smoothest threads and they do tend to catch occasionally and then sort of crunch a little bit on the final turn, just sometimes. Sometimes it feels very smooth, like that, and then other times, depending on where you catch the threads, you get the crunch. So it really depends. It's not 100% of the time. But that is the design of the pen. It is referencing the original Skyline. Now, I don't have an original Skyline. The only other Eversharp thing I have is this vintage mechanical pencil, which is just a stunning piece of work. Winds down nice. I think it's like a 1.1 millimeter lead there. And that is an original Eversharp. So I don't have the original one to reference, but there are different materials here. It did not use an anodized aluminium body. That is a modern take on it. And that is done for a number of reasons. Stability, but also manufacturing is a lot easier with a material like that. So that is the basics of this pen. Size comparison, and alongside the Lamy Safari here, in their capped forms, you can see it's just a couple of millimeters shorter there than the Lamy Safari. Uncapped, they're about the same kind of length. And then posted, the Wahl-Eversharp comes out considerably shorter. It does post very deeply and quite securely. There's a little bit of wobble on it, but it's secure on there with no worries. A little bit of a back weighting issue, but we'll come back to that. But you can see it is considerably shorter there than the Lamy Safari. Okay, specific dimensions now of the Wahl-Eversharp modern Skyline. It is 138 millimeters when it is capped. It is about 130 when it's uncapped. And this is actually my preferred method of writing with this pen. And then posted, it comes in at 150. Now, it's not the length that is the problem, it's the weight. Around the middle of the section is about 9 millimeters, around the body of the pen just over 12. So it's a fairly thin section, and then it leads back to, as you will see, a bit of back weighting. The entire pen weighs 33 grams. 16.5 in the body and 16.5 in the cap. So you are putting half the pen's body weight on the back. But as you can see here, also big chunks of that weight are in the very end here. So you do absolutely feel that. With a lightweight plastic section and a lightweight aluminium body, all this weight, it feels back weighted. Now, if you hold it further up on the pen, it's okay, and I can use it like that. But this pen for me feels like it wants to be held slightly lower down, and I do feel that back weighting. So I do end up writing, particularly like longer writing sessions with this pen, with it unposted. Let's do a little writing sample now with the Wahl. A bit of a slight hard start there. Eversharp. That was probably just because I've had the pen uncapped quite a lot while I've been doing this review. It's not something I've noticed. Skyline. And I cannot write Skyline. This is a medium steel nib, and the ink in this is Pilot Hiroshizuku Konpeki. So the pen writes quite well. As I said, that little skip there at the start, that was probably just because the pen had been open while I've been filming for the last, few minutes. It's not the wettest pen going around, but, it's laying down a decent amount of ink. This is also a good ink for those sorts of pens. Reverse writing is really nice, actually. Very smooth, it feels quite consistent. Not a soft nib, like you can gently push a little bit of line variation out, but it's definitely not designed for that. Quick writing. Like no issues whatsoever, no skippy or hard starting in that kind of writing. So one thing I will say, for me, this is a reliable writer. Not like hard starts here, little hard start there, of course. But it's consistent. It has no ink starvation. I've been able to write for long periods of time. I do tend to find that after a considerable amount of writing, like over a page, that it writes just a little bit drier, and sometimes, like a little rest is not a bad thing. But it is it's a very consistent writer, and it's a comfortable writer particularly when it is unposted. But you can see here it's writing relatively wet, it's smooth, it does the job, and I think reliable or consistent is the best way of referring to the writing experience with this pen. Let's talk business. On the Wahl-Eversharp website, this pen retails for $69, which I think is it's a decent price. It puts it well above the price of things like the Lamy All-Star. Obviously not into gold nib territory, but there are things to take into account. Cartridge converter pen made, using pretty reliable, sensible materials. It writes well, it writes consistently. It's not an exciting writer, but it writes really well and consistently. And that, for me, is a big, big plus for this pen. So $69 I don't think is too bad. If you can find it on sale at other retailers and things, I think even better. Like around the $50, I think this is a really good pen. Heading up towards the $60, which is like over 100 Australian, puts this into a territory where you consider it. So what are the pros and cons of the Wahl-Eversharp Modern Skyline? Cons. The posted balance. It's just not good for me. Usable, but not great. I'd really love to see this with a slightly heavier material in the barrel, like a lacquered brass or something like that, or even just a little bit more weighting down towards the nib, would just give it a little bit more stability in that posted form, because it posts nicely and posts deep and secure, all that kind of thing, but it just feels like all the weight is back in here. So a heavier material in the front of the pen, in the barrel, would just balance that out just a little bit better. But then also, you wouldn't get the lovely finish that an anodized aluminium can get. Like, it's a unique finish that you kind of only get in that format. The other cons I have are those crunching cap threads, which I don't love. The only other thing I kind of want to mention is that it doesn't say anywhere where the pen is made. If it was made in the USA, I'm sure it would say on the packaging, made in the USA or something along those lines. Just something to take into account, that, in terms of, while it's inspired by the vintage brand, they are doing things to make it accessible to a modern world. And that often means getting pens manufactured overseas, where they are more affordably produced. But apart from that, there's a lot to like. The nib, it's smooth, it's relatively wet, it's mostly very reliable and consistent. I love the design of the nib, like the shape of it and the the little design elements in terms of like the branding and everything, I think it looks really great. Like there's no concern there whatsoever. And of course, the design of the pen and its legacy, its connection to the history of the brand is really, really lovely. I love the vintage inspired. I do love that legacy. And in terms of actual design, the blue in the cap there, matching the blue of the body, I think is really well balanced. I think it's beautiful. It's got great lines, and people who see this pen ask about this pen. And anytime I get a chance to have a conversation with someone about fountain pens, I take it. And this is one of those pens that people ask about because it's unique. It's cool. So yes, I would love to see some different, a few changes in a future version, a bit more weight perhaps, in the body, just to balance the weight of that cap. So I really like this pen. I think it's, as I said, it's got lovely lines. It writes consistently and well. And at its price point, I think it's not a bad deal. Just a quick little comment to say a big thank you to the team behind Wahl-Eversharp for providing this pen for me to review and show you. It's a pen that has been getting a bit of attention recently. I think they're doing a bit of a push on getting it out there. And I was grateful to be part of that and to be able to share it with you here. So a big thank you to them for their support of my channel. So it's an interesting pen. It's not perfect, but I think it has a lot going for it, and it's definitely a pen worth investigating. So thank you for watching. I hope you found it interesting and useful. As I said, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a member of this channel. In the meantime, enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.